Mysterious mini-polyglots. Children speaking extinct languages from past lives. Asterisk. When 3-year-old Aria Thompson first whispered the ancient words, Ne Shemti Ankh Emhotep, in her sleep, her mother Sarah thought it was just another case of toddler gibberish. But when the child began drawing hieroglyphic symbols with startling accuracy the next morning, speaking in what sounded like an ancient dialect, Sarah's world shifted. The little girl wasn't just babbling, she was speaking Middle Egyptian, a language that died over 1,000 years ago. A language no 3-year-old in modern-day Oregon should know. A language that would lead the Thompson family down a rabbit hole of impossible memories, ancient secrets, and questions that science still can't answer. What you're about to hear isn't fiction. This is the documented case of Aria Thompson, one of several children around the world who have stunned linguists and researchers by speaking languages that shouldn't exist in their young minds. Asterisk. If stories like this fascinate you, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Trust me, you won't want to miss what comes next. Asterisk. It began on a rain-soaked Tuesday morning in Portland, Oregon, in March 2019. Sarah Thompson was preparing breakfast when she heard her daughter Aria, then 3 years and 4 months old, having what sounded like a conversation in the living room. At first, Sarah assumed Aria was talking to her stuffed animal's typical behavior for a toddler. But something about the rhythm and cadence of the words made her pause. The sounds coming from the living room weren't English. They weren't Spanish, French, or any modern language Sarah recognized from her college linguistics courses. The words had a deliberate, almost ceremonial quality. Ankh Adya Seneb, Hotep di Nesu. The pronunciation was crisp, confident, nothing like the usual stumbling attempts of a child learning to speak. Sarah crept to the doorway and watched, stunned, as Aria sat cross-legged on the carpet, her small hands moving in precise gestures while she spoke. The child's eyes were closed, her face serene, almost adult-like in its composure. She was speaking to someone or something that wasn't there. Aria, sweetie, what are you doing? The little girl's eyes snapped open, the strange words stopping. Abruptly, she looked at her mother with confusion, as if waking from a dream. I was talking to the lady with the pretty crown, Mommy. She was teaching me the important words. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. What lady, honey? The one with the gold around her eyes. She says I need to remember the words so I can go home. Aria's voice was matter of fact, the way children speak about imaginary friends. But there was something unsettling about the clarity of her description, the certainty in her young voice. That evening, Sarah mentioned the incident to her husband Mark, a software engineer who approached everything with logical skepticism. He suggested they might be dealing with the phase children, often created elaborate fantasy worlds. But over the following days, the conversations continued, always in the same mysterious language, always with the same focused intensity. Sarah began recording these sessions on her phone, initially just to show Mark the extent of Aria's imagination. But when she played the recordings back, she noticed something troubling. The language had structure, consistent grammar patterns, and what sounded like formal pronunciations. This wasn't gibberish. This was linguistic communication with rules and meaning. The recordings captured phrases like Dua Netcher en Hot Epdi Nesu and Ankh Wedya Seneb Nebit. Each session lasted between 5 and 15 minutes, and Aria would emerge from them seeming tired but content, as if she'd completed an important task. By the end of the first week, Sarah had filled her phone with hours of recordings. The language was becoming more complex, more fluent, and most unnervingly, Aria was beginning to correct herself when she spoke English, as if the ancient words were becoming more natural to her than her native tongue. Part 2. Es Shil Ation Within. 2 weeks of the first incident, Aria's behavior had shifted dramatically. The mysterious language sessions were no longer confined to morning conversations with invisible companions. The child would slip into the ancient tongue during everyday activities, while coloring, playing with toys, even during meals. Most disturbing was how Arya began rejecting modern conveniences. She refused to eat with forks, insisting on using her hands in very specific ways. She would only drink from clay cups, throwing tantrums when offered plastic sippy cups. When Sarah attempted to dress her in regular clothes, Arya would cry and point to her chest, repeatedly saying Shendit and Wesek words. That meant nothing to the family, but seemed desperately important to the child. Mark documented these behavioral changes with growing concern. Their once cheerful toddler was becoming increasingly frustrated with the modern world around her. She would stare at family photos with confusion, asking why everyone looked wrong and why their paint wasn't on their faces. The breakthrough came when Arya began drawing. Not typical toddler scribbles, but intricate symbols and patterns that looked remarkably like hieroglyphics. Sarah watched in amazement as her 3-year-old daughter's tiny hands moved with surprising confidence, creating images of birds, eyes, and geometric shapes with startling accuracy. One particular drawing caught Sarah's attention. Arya had sketched what appeared to be a woman in profile, wearing an elaborate headdress and collar. The figure's eye was decorated with the distinctive extended lines characteristic of ancient Egyptian art. Below the figure, Arya had drawn a series of symbols that looked remarkably like cartouches, the oval shapes Egyptians used to enclose royal names in hieroglyphics. "Who is this, Arya?" Sarah asked, pointing to the drawing. "That's me," Arya replied without hesitation. "When I lived in the big house with the stones." Sarah's heart raced. She pulled out her laptop and began searching for images of ancient Egyptian art. The resemblance between Arya's drawing and authentic Egyptian artistic styles was unmistakable. But how could a 3-year-old who had never been exposed to such imagery recreate it so accurately? The escalation reached a concerning peak when Arya began experiencing what appeared to be emotional distress related to her memories. She would cry about being separated from her children and ask when she could return to her palace. During these episodes, she would revert entirely to the ancient language, speaking rapidly and with apparent urgency, as if trying to communicate something vital. Mark, initially skeptical, began to worry about his daughter's psychological well-being. They consulted their pediatrician, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, who suggested the behavior might be related to an overactive imagination or possibly early signs of a dissociative condition. However, Dr. Walsh admitted she had never seen anything quite like Arya's linguistic abilities in such a young child. The family's friends and extended relatives began to notice the changes during visits. Arya would greet them with formal gestures and attempt to speak in her mysterious language, becoming frustrated when they didn't understand. She seemed to expect a level of reverence and formality that was entirely inappropriate for a toddler god as the weeks progressed. The line between Arya's past life personality and her present-day self became increasingly blurred. The happy, playful child they once knew was being overshadowed by someone or something far more ancient and complex. Part 3. The INV-STIJATIO and desperate for answers. Sarah reached out to Dr. Amanda Chun, a linguistics professor at Portland State University who specialized in ancient languages. Dr. Chun was initially skeptical when Sarah described her daughter's abilities, but agreed to listen to the recordings as a professional courtesy. The phone call that followed changed everything. Dr. Chun's voice was tight with disbelief as she analyzed the audio files. "Mrs. Thompson, I need to be very clear about something. Your daughter is speaking Middle Egyptian, a form of the ancient Egyptian language that was used approximately 2000 to 1600 BCE. The pronunciation is remarkably accurate, and the grammar structures are correct. This is not a language any modern child should know. Dr. Chun arranged to meet with the family on April 15, 2019. She brought with her Dr. Robert Hassan, an Egyptologist from the University of Oregon, and Dr. Patricia Hernandez, a child psychologist, who specialized in unusual developmental cases. The meeting took place in the Thompsons' living room, with cameras rolling to document the interaction. Aria, initially shy around the strangers, gradually warmed to Dr. Hassan when he greeted her with a simple phrase in modern Arabic. Her response was immediate and startling. She replied in what Dr. Hassan later confirmed was grammatically correct Middle Egyptian, effectively correcting his modern Arabic with the ancient form. The child understood that my Arabic was the wrong version, Dr. Hassan explained in his subsequent report. She responded as if I had made an error in protocol, using the formal court language of the Middle Kingdom period. Her pronunciation of the hieroglyphic consonants is particularly remarkable. She's articulating sounds that we can only guess at based on scholarly reconstruction. During the session, the team presented Aria with various images and artifacts. When shown photographs of the Great Pyramid of Giza, she showed mild interest, but pointed out that the white stones were missing a reference to the limestone casing that once covered the pyramid but had been removed over the centuries. When presented with images of Egyptian artifacts from different periods, she consistently showed preference for items from the Middle Kingdom era, around 2055-1650 BCE. The most chilling moment came when Dr. Hassan showed Aria a reproduction of a Middle Kingdom funeral text. The 3-year-old studied it carefully, then began to recite portions from memory, her small finger following the hieroglyphic text with surprising accuracy. Ankh Wedya Seneb. Hotep D Nesu Os Ir Is D F Pare. Keru. She read, her voice taking on the formal cadence of ritual recitation. Dr. Hassan's face went pale. She's reading from the coffin texts, he whispered to his colleagues. These are funerary spells from the Middle Kingdom. She's reciting the offering formula perfectly. The investigation team spent 6 hours with Aria over 2 days, conducting various tests and interviews. They discovered that her ancient Egyptian vocabulary included specific terms for royal regalia, ceremonial objects, and court protocols that wouldn't be found in any children's book or popular media about Egypt. Most remarkably, when asked about her other life, Aria provided specific details about daily routines, food, and social customs that aligned perfectly with what historians knew about upper-class life in Middle Kingdom Egypt. She spoke of eating tiger nut sweets and drinking barley beer, of wearing linen wrappings, and having servants fan her with ostrich feathers. The team's final report, submitted to the Journal of Consciousness Studies, concluded, subject displays impossible knowledge of Middle Egyptian language and cultural practices. No conventional explanation can account for the accuracy and sophistication of her linguistic abilities. Part 4. The BRE Convecti investigation's most stunning discovery came when Dr. Hassan decided to pursue Aria's specific claims about her other life. The child had consistently mentioned living in a house of stones near the Great Water and being mother to 2 sons and a daughter. She also repeatedly drew the same hieroglyphic symbols, which Dr. Hassan eventually identified as possible. Named Cartouches. Working with Dr. Mahmoud Fahmy, a colleague at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, Dr. Hassan began cross-referencing Aria's drawings with known Middle Kingdom inscriptions. The breakthrough came on May 3, 2019, when Dr. Fahmy sent an urgent email containing photographs from a recently translated papyrus fragment found in a tomb near Dahshur. The papyrus contained a cartouche that was virtually identical to one of Aria's drawings. The name within the cartouche read Nefertiti Senpata, a previously unknown minor royal or noble woman from the reign of Amenhotep III, around 1860 to 1814 BCE. More shocking still, the papyrus fragment contained biographical details that matched Arya's claims with uncanny accuracy. The woman had indeed lived in a palace complex near Memphis, had 3 children, and held the title of God's wife, a high-ranking religious position. The fragment even mentioned her preference for tiger nut confections and her role in certain temple rituals. Dr. Fahmy's research revealed that Nefertiti-Dasha had died young, possibly in childbirth, and had been buried in a tomb that was discovered and looted in the 1920s. Most of the artifacts from her burial had been scattered to private collections, but the papyrus fragment had only recently been translated from a collection acquired by the Egyptian Museum. The implications were staggering. Arya was providing accurate information about a historical figure whose existence had only been confirmed by modern archaeology and whose personal details were recorded in documents that had been buried for nearly 4,000 years. To test this connection further, Dr. Hassan arranged for Arya to be shown photographs of artifacts potentially connected to Nefertiti-Esmpata's tomb. The child's reactions were immediate and emotional. When shown a photograph of a particular canopit jar, she became visibly distressed, saying, "That's mine," and asking why it was broken and dirty. Most remarkably, when presented with a photograph of jewelry pieces from the tomb, Arya pointed to a specific golden collar and said, "That's my wesek for the said festival." Dr. Hassan later confirmed that the collar was indeed ceremonial jewelry designed for the said festival, a rare celebration of royal renewal. The final piece of evidence came when Dr. Hassan showed Arya a reconstruction drawing of how the tomb might have appeared when intact. The child studied it carefully, then began to point out errors in the reconstruction, claiming that certain objects were in wrong positions and that the offering table was too small. When Dr. Hassan contacted the original excavation team from the 1920s, he discovered their field notes contained sketches that supported Arya's corrections. The tomb layout she described matched the original archaeological evidence more accurately than the museum's reconstruction. The scholarly community was divided. Some dismissed the case as an elaborate hoax or coincidence. Others suggested that Arya might have somehow accessed information about the tomb through unconventional means. But a growing number of researchers found themselves confronting the impossible. A 3-year-old child who possessed intimate knowledge of a life lived 4,000 years ago. Part 5, the CONFRONTIO in the story of Arya Thompson, might have remained within academic circles if not for Dr. Hassan's decision to present the case at the International Conference on Consciousness Studies in September 2019. The presentation, titled Anomalous Historical Knowledge in a Pre-Literate Child, sparked immediate controversy and skepticism from the scientific community. Dr. Michael Shermer, a prominent skeptic and psychologist, attended the conference specifically to challenge the findings. His confrontation with Dr. Hassan was recorded and later posted online, where it garnered millions of views. "You're asking us to believe that a 3-year-old has access to memories from ancient Egypt," Dr. Shermer argued during the heated Q&A session. The more reasonable explanation is that the child has been exposed to this information through modern sources, or that the parents have unconsciously coached her responses. Dr. Hassan's response was measured but firm. "Dr. Shermer, we've conducted extensive background checks on the family. They have no connection to Egyptology, no advanced knowledge of ancient languages, and no access to the specific archaeological data that matches Arya's claims. The child's linguistic abilities were documented before any research was conducted." The confrontation reached its climax when Dr. Shermer demanded a live demonstration. A video call was arranged with the Thompson family, and Arya, now 4 years old, was asked to interact with Dr. Schirmer directly. The skeptic began by showing Arya various images of ancient Egyptian artifacts, including several that were not authentic. Arya immediately identified the fakes, explaining in her mixture of English and Middle Egyptian that they were wrong and not real. When Dr. Schirmer showed her a photograph of a genuine Middle Kingdom statue, she became excited and began speaking rapidly in ancient Egyptian, pointing to specific details on the figure's regalia. Dr. Schirmer's expression shifted from skepticism to bewilderment when Arya began to critique his pronunciation of basic Egyptian phrases. She corrected his attempts at speaking ancient Egyptian with the patience of a teacher, demonstrating pronunciations that experts confirmed were more accurate than those typically used by modern scholars. The most dramatic moment came when Dr. Schirmer, attempting to catch Arya in a contradiction, asked her about the color of the pyramids. Most children would answer with the golden brown color visible in modern photographs. Arya, however, became animated and began describing the pyramids as white and shining like the sun, even drawing pictures of pyramids covered in smooth, white limestone, historically accurate descriptions of how the pyramids appeared in ancient times. Following the conference, the case attracted international attention. The Thompson family found themselves at the center of a media storm, with documentary crews, researchers, and curious visitors arriving at their Portland home daily. The attention became overwhelming, particularly for Arya, who began to show signs of stress and confusion. Child psychologist Dr. Patricia Hernandez recommended that the family limit Arya's exposure to the research community, noting that the intense scrutiny was affecting the child's normal development. Arya is still a 4-year-old child, Dr. Hernandez explained in a press statement. While her abilities are remarkable, our primary concern must be her psychological well-being and healthy development. The family made the difficult decision to withdraw from further public research, though they continued to work privately with a small team of trusted researchers. Sarah Thompson later described this period as the most challenging time in our family's life, noting that Arya had begun to retreat from her ancient Egyptian persona, possibly as a protective mechanism. The scientific community remained divided. While some researchers published papers supporting the validity of Arya's case, others maintained that conventional explanations hadn't been adequately explored. The debate continued in academic journals, with neither side able to definitively prove their position. Part 6. The AFTRA Today. Arya Thompson is 7 years old, a bright first grader living a relatively normal life in Portland, Oregon. Intense manifestations of her Egyptian memories have faded significantly, though traces of her unusual past remain. She still occasionally speaks phrases in Middle Egyptian, particularly when she's tired or stressed, and she continues to show an instinctive understanding of ancient Egyptian art and culture. Sarah Thompson reports that Arya's Egyptian phase began to diminish around her 5th birthday, coinciding with her increased engagement with modern peers and activities. It's as if she made a choice to focus on this life, Sarah explains. She still remembers everything, but she's choosing to be Arya rather than whoever she was before. The family continues to work with Dr. Hassan and Dr. Chun, who have documented Arya's transition from her ancient memories to her present identity. Their research has revealed that Arya's knowledge of Middle Egyptian remains intact, though she rarely chooses to demonstrate it. When tested recently, she could still read hieroglyphic texts with remarkable accuracy, though she expressed preference for reading English books about normal kid stuff. Dr. Hassan has published several papers on the case, contributing to a growing body of research on children who display impossible knowledge of historical periods. He notes that Arya's case shares similarities with dozens of other documented instances worldwide, though few have been as extensively verified or linguistically sophisticated. Arya's case challenges our fundamental assumptions about consciousness, memory, and the nature of identity. Dr. Hassan wrote in his 2022 follow-up study. Whether we explain her abilities through reincarnation, genetic memory, or some unknown form of consciousness transference, the implications are profound. The Thompson family has received thousands of letters from around the world, many from parents whose children have displayed similar abilities. Sarah has become an unofficial support network for families, dealing with what researchers now call historical consciousness phenomena in children. Other documented cases have emerged, including 5-year-old Chun Wei in Beijing, who speaks classical Chinese from the Tang Dynasty, and 8-year-old Isabella Santos in São Paulo, who demonstrates knowledge of Mayan mathematical systems that she shouldn't know. Each case shares common elements: early manifestation, historical accuracy, and gradual integration with the child's modern identity. The scientific community continues to study these phenomena, though research is limited by ethical concerns about studying children and the difficulty of verifying historical claims. The Institute for Consciousness Studies at the University of Virginia has established a database of similar cases, documenting over 200 instances of children displaying impossible historical knowledge. As for Aria, she occasionally mentions her other life in casual conversation, usually when discussing school projects about ancient history. She corrects inaccuracies in her textbooks matter-of-factly, explaining to her teachers that the book got it wrong about various aspects of ancient Egyptian life. Her teachers have learned to research her corrections, which invariably prove to be accurate. Last month, Aria asked her mother if she could visit Egypt someday. When Sarah asked why, Aria replied simply, "I want to see how much it's changed." The request was made with the casual tone of a child wanting to revisit a favorite vacation spot, not as someone contemplating a journey to an ancient homeland. The mystery of Aria Thompson remains unsolved, a puzzle that challenges our understanding of consciousness, memory, and the nature of human identity. She continues to grow and develop as a normal child, the one who carries within her the memories of a life lived 4,000 years ago. In the end, perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Aria's story isn't the ancient language she speaks, or the impossible memories she carries, but how seamlessly she has learned to exist in both worlds, honoring the past while embracing the present. If the voices of history can truly speak through the innocent lips of children, then perhaps we are all walking libraries of forgotten lives, waiting for the right moment to remember who we once were.